All right, listen carefully, watch this entire video. I'm about to save your fantasy football week 3 and get you the win. How am I going to do that? Well, we got to be first aware of what happened last week. Is it time to panic? Guys like Jeanty, guys like Coleman, guys like London, guys like A.J. Brown and Justin Jefferson absolutely crapped the bed and busted in week 2. Should you worry? Should you start them for week 3? What do you do now? I got the answers right here in this video. All right, I'm going to go over who busted, what's going on, are they trending up, are they trending down? So this is the video to watch if you guys actually want to win your leagues, and particularly this must-win fantasy football week, because week 2 was a wild one. If you're new to the channel, smash it, tap it, slap it, hit the thumbs up. It takes a fraction of a second just to hit the thumbs up and drop a question below. If you have any starts and sits questions, I will be doing a video tomorrow on starts and sits optimal matchups. So make sure you guys do subscribe, turn on the bell. You don't want to miss that. So you're getting a competitive edge on whether the player you're starting actually has a good matchup. So starts and sits is tomorrow, but today is more of a discussion. It's a discussion. What happened last week? How are we going to fix it? Who should we start? Should we bench guys like Brian Thomas Jr.? What should we do? This is the episode in this conversation we're going to have. It's an open discussion, guys. This is not like, oh, go to 5-minute mark to get this player. This is an open discussion because you need the practical talk. You need the practical awareness for you to win. So let's go over. First of all, let's go over here. Who crapped the bed? Some big names that crapped the bed. How bad did they do? All right. And then we'll kind of go over, should we start them this week or are they going to continue on this trend? Okay. So it's very, very important. Again, if you're new, smash the thumbs up, drop a comment below, and let's get to it, okay? Starting off with the quarterback position here, I mean, we're talking Jalen Hurts finishing 25th amongst quarterbacks last week in week 2. Heading into week 3, is that going to continue? Josh Allen, 24th, 11.8 points. Again, 11.5 for Jalen Hurts. Caleb Williams, okay? Not a guy I'm really high on, all right? 17 points, finishing 20th. So a couple big names here that didn't do well. And obviously Joe Burrow going on IR now, a guy that I told you, I just don't really trust Joe Burrow. I'm not really a Joe Burrow advocate. I'm like, anchor your team with an ace quarterback, and Allen was my particularly first guy on the list. Now, let's talk about the quarterbacks, okay? Now, with quarterbacks, what you see is what you get for the most part. They're relatively steady. Now, a guy I got as my backup, and who I started this week in week 2 was Bo Nix, because, I got him in a bunch of leagues where I wasn't able to get Allen. His first week, he did bad. Second week, he did pick it up. I think he threw like 3 touchdowns, 23 points, something like that. Had himself a better week 2 because, if you look at him last year, he's pretty consistent. Now, I believe a guy like Josh Allen will bounce back. Let me tell you why. First and foremost, he actually really kind of annoys me this year because he runs the ball a lot of checkdowns, a lot of short passes, a lot of handoffs to Cook. Really annoying. Now, they were actually ahead. When they're ahead, he doesn't take risks. When they're behind, he's going to start throwing it to Coleman. So one thing I found particularly with Josh Allen, if he's got a tougher matchup, if you feel that they're going to be behind or trying to come back, Josh Allen is going to throw more. If not, he's just playing it super safe, okay? That's one thing that frustrates me with Allen, because they were up, I think, 1 or 2 scores, and they were, third or fourth quarter, I think it was third quarter, and they're handing it off in 3rd and 4. Dude, throw for the first down, get more points, and he wasn't doing that. He was playing it super safe. So that is really annoying with Allen. But I think Allen will be fine. He's still got that rushing upside. Hurts is always a concern because this year, particularly because they're coming off that Super Bowl hangover, and that's trickled down to A.J. Brown, which I'll talk to in a second. So again, I still wouldn't sit Hurts. I still wouldn't, sit Allen, but just be aware that that's kind of how things flowed for week 2. Now, we're talking about running back. A lot of garbage going on here, right? Chase Brown, 34th amongst running backs. This is running back rankings past week. Jeanty finished 36, 7.4 points, averaged 3.9 yards per carry. Ashton Jeanty. Now, I did see a video with Pete Carroll saying, hey, we're just working him in. He should get more work. So should we panic on Jeanty? The quick answer, no, don't panic on Jeanty. You saw some flashes. He's, trucking defenders. He's spinning really creatively. Now, the defense that he was playing was a tougher matchup. So I'm not really going to hold it against him. Chargers played him tough. So that can only get better. Again, he's getting his feet wet. And obviously, I think he ran the ball like 11 times, something like that. Go back and check it out. But that's going to go up. Again, Pete Carroll's saying that's going to go up. Henderson, this is really disappointing. Only 3 rushing attempts, 6 points. Finished 40th amongst running backs. Now, going into week 2, I was hearing a lot, and I mean a lot of talk about them saying Henderson is going to get more work. Now, is that going to happen? I don't really trust coaches. Now you're saying, well, Joe, you trust Carroll on Jeanty. Well, Jeanty was a first-round pick. Obviously, Henderson was a high draft capital pick. Patriots have always kind of screwed you when it came to running backs. I remember going back a couple of years, it was Sony Michel. He was a top running back prospect coming out of the NFL draft, and his career got squashed with the Patriots. Now, I was hoping that with the flashes we saw of Henderson in training camp and in preseason, that they would actually utilize him a lot more. It's been very disappointing, to say the least. So I'm personally going to be benching Henderson. Okay, I'm going to tell you guys how to fix your teams here at the end. Okay, so stay at the end. Derrick Henry, 60th amongst running backs. So going back to, these rookies, nobody's safe. Henry has already fumbled 2 weeks in a row. Last week, finishing 60th amongst running backs, 2.3 points, okay? Very, very disappointing, all right? And then you got Marvin Hampton, 3.5 points. That's not good, guys. Absolutely not good at all, okay? So these are big names. And also, JCM, 64th amongst running backs, 1.7 points. Now, you got to take a look at who's trending up, who's trending down. If you look at a situation like JCM, Ja'Cory Cross-Gamero on Washington, their running back, he's going to be the starter. Austin Eckler's done, and I don't know why they're running Austin Eckler. Don't ask me. The guy was washed up for years, product of the offense. He was never that good. He was a product of the Chargers offense, did well there. And for some reason, the Washington Commanders we're going to start him over the young, dynamic, hungry JCM, which is crazy. So now I'm glad that JCM gets a start, and he should be getting the volume there in Washington. So even though he finished with 1.7 points, you're not going to sit him. You are 100% starting JCM, regardless of who he's playing this week. He's going to get work. Eckler is gone. Good riddance. Start the young, hungry guy, okay? And again, when we're looking at a guy like Hampton, this is where it's going to be a little bit questionable. Now, if you do have a better option than Hampton, probably not, because you probably drafted Hampton in the 2nd or 3rd round. You got to start him, but there is an issue last week. He did fumble when they were in garbage time, when they were trying to run the clock. I don't know whether that was just a simple miscommunication, but you got to understand here that they drafted him, I think, first round? You can't bench players you draft in the first round. It just doesn't make sense, man. You can't do it just off one fumble. Now, I was seeing Najee. They had similar attempts. I don't know what it was, 8 or 10 attempts, whatever. Equally, I think it was 11, give or take. It was somewhere in the, high 9s or early double digits there in regards to attempts, but I think they're on par. But what bothers me, I don't have the stats exactly in front of me, but I talked about it last show in the Studs and Sucks. I will be talking about it again tomorrow. But they were on par with equal attempts. So they're basically splitting it 50-50. And I think a big part of that was they were running Najee at the end of that game to preserve Hampton, because they knew, they had the win, but also it was that fumble as well. How I expect this next week, I see 60-40 in regards to Hampton. Now, Hampton's really got to grab the ball and make a run for it. He's really got to do something, okay? So this is the week. Now, that being said, I may still start him as my RB2, and we're going to have to see how it goes. But I'm just not giving up on Jeanty. I'm not giving up on Hampton. I'm just not doing it, okay? So we'll see how that goes. Now, wide receiver was an absolute crapshoot, okay? Look at this, okay? Ladd McConkey finishing 47th. Now, I mentioned guys like Ladd McConkey. This is the thing. When I mention a player is going to regress and they are showing signs of regression, meaning Ladd McConkey finishing as the wide receiver 3 on his team 2 weeks in a row, it's literally QJ, Keenan Allen, and then Ladd. Ladd's the 3. Ladd is a good safety blanket for short passes, clutch plays for Herbert. But when you're looking at the red zone or deep balls, you're looking at QJ. If you're looking at a clutch touchdown, in the red zone, it's Keenan Allen. We saw that in week 2. So Ladd McConkey, what do you have, 9 points, something like that, finishing 47th amongst wide receivers. I don't see that trend changing, all right? If you drafted Ladd in round 2, which I told you not to do, you got to start him. But that one I actually saw coming. A.J. Brown, I don't have any stock. Finished 66th amongst wide receivers in week 2. Week 1 had himself a terrible game as well, 7.7 points last week. absolutely terrible. Now, I didn't really see it this bad with A.J. Brown, but I did, again, talk about this Super Bowl hangover with the Eagles, and we're kind of seeing that here earlier on with A.J. Brown, okay? Drake London, 74th. I mean, that is absolutely terrible for a guy who's on a contract year and the only viable target there in Atlanta. Absolutely terrible. Keon Coleman finished 75th. Is that going to continue? Again, we talked about, the Bills being ahead and them running the ball, not having urgency to throw, but very, very terrible coming off a good week 1 and then crapping the bed in week 2. So a lot of inconsistencies, not just for my players that I have, but for players across the board. It seems like they're really messing with your team. Like, perfect example here, 4.7 points in week 2 for Marvin Harrison Jr. when they have no one else to throw to, finishing 81st amongst wide receivers. And then I heard an interview where the coach was talking and he was saying something along the line of like, we're not thinking about targets. Yeah, we got to get on the ball. Like, it just seems like they're downplaying the targets is what I was hearing with one of the coaches there. I don't like the sound of that, man. I just don't. When you have a top tier talent in Marvin Harrison Jr. and he's not getting the ball, there's issues. And that's what I want to talk to you guys about at the end here. We'll get to that in a second, is that they got to use these guys. I'll tell you why. Okay, Brian Thomas Jr. finishing 55th. Another guy I said would decline and just not worth a second round pick. And we saw it, man, just not going for the ball. Now you can say that he's getting hospital balls thrown at him and he's not risking himself. He said, quote, I read somewhere that he was saying it's a business decision that he didn't want to catch the ball. Dude, he wasn't making efforts, in the blocking. I didn't see him make efforts to try to catch the ball. He just was not really going for it. You got to, as a receiver, when you're going to catch the ball, if you're running up the field or in the slot or wherever you're running or in the end zone, you got to anticipate a hit and still make that catch. And a lot of players do it, man. The catch comes first. Yeah, you could have a safety coming over to full blitz running at you. The priority is to catch that ball and be able to secure it and then come down with the ball and also try to protect yourself. But to protect yourself first and not make an effort for the ball, that's what we saw to Brian Thomas Jr. And that is a concern if you're a fantasy owner of him. And I told you to avoid him because I liked him last year in the 9th round. I don't like him this year because of what I'm seeing and the high draft capital. So I faded him, okay? Got a guy like DJ Moore here also, a guy I don't have stock in, finishing 49th, 9.6 points. And Justin Jefferson finishing 38th amongst wide receivers, a guy that was drafted as a top 4 pick across the board in all fantasy drafts. Now, you got to factor in a regression. McCarthy's hurt now. We got injuries with Jamar Chase's quarterback as well with Burrow. He still could be okay. We saw flashes that he could be okay in week 2 when Browning came in. So what do we do here, Joe? It's a disaster. Well, what you got to take a look at is kind of like who's emerging, right? Who can you trade for? And is that emergence legit? A guy like Troy Franklin, I think, is a legit emergence. I think that his connection going back to college with Knicks is now finally starting to show effect in the NFL. I talked about Sutton not being a phenomenal wide receiver. I was surprised they actually extended him and paid him. Courtland Sutton is just not that good. Now, we saw that in week 2 where Franklin was heavily targeted. Now, I don't know. Maybe next week it's going to be a Sutton week. Maybe the coaches are in cahoots with these betting sites and prop sites and say, hey, we're going to try to mess with teams as much as possible. I don't know. But I know that Franklin was emerging. So if you are on the waiver wire week 3, consider picking up Franklin, and you're going to have to pay a considerable amount of FAAB amount to get him, free agency acquisition budget to get him. Now, some people's waiver wire went through yesterday and, maybe he's gone. But at the end of the day, man, I did a talk. That's why you guys got to turn on the bell. We talked about waiver wire and he was a recommendation. So guys like Franklin, guys like Wan'Dale Robinson, not exciting years, 2 hours, we're not wowed, but sometimes they emerge. Sometimes the quarterback gravitates to them, or sometimes it's just a 1 week wonder. And you have to differentiate that. One way to look at that is how many targets did they get? And for example, there's a lot of receivers and tight ends that had 1 target, 1 touchdown, or 2 targets, 2 touchdowns. And it's just it's low target and high, low target and a touchdown means it's just not sustainable, right? It doesn't feel sustainable. But if you guys got guys that have high targets, like 8 or 9 targets, there's where you got to start looking because they're being heavily targeted. Does that make sense? Don't just buy the 1 touchdown wonders, okay? So be cautious there when you're looking at these receivers. So what do you do here? Well, if you drafted high draft capital in guys like Marvin Harrison and Brian Thomas, I don't really care for as much. I projected that. Hopefully he bounces back if you guys got him. But guys like A.J. Brown, London, Marvin Harrison, guys like Jeanty, first round pick, right? You can't sit these guys, unless you have a absolute better option. Now, if you guys picked up Franklin and you got maybe A.J. Brown, take a look at the matchup tomorrow. I'm going to be talking about matchup and say, well, maybe I might start Franklin over Brown because he got targeted heavy in week 2. Brown has done nothing the first 2 weeks, and he's got an easier matchup. So it's about taking a look at how they did last week. Was it just a bad matchup? Do I have a better option? Who is that better option? How many receptions has that option been getting the past couple weeks? Now, as we get into week 3, and when we're finally in week 4, you're able to see trends on who the top target getters and volume getters are on that team, okay? And honestly, do you panic? No, it's only been 2 weeks. We got to string out a win here in week 3 and 4 to get back on track if we're 0-2. You just need to, okay? How to do that again, you got to get the volume getters. You don't want to, even though you spent high draft capital on some of these guys, okay, you don't necessarily want to continue riding a trend that's going nowhere. You know what I'm saying? Or are just not going to get you the fantasy points. So you got to know when to hold them, know when to fold them. And that's my advice to you guys here today. So panic? No, it's still early. Do I need to pivot? Possibly. But make sure you make the right pivot. Don't just put in somebody over A.J. Brown that had 2 targets and 1 touchdown. And okay. Because it might not be sustainable. It's just not a high target person. Maybe they just got touchdown heavy and lucky that particular week. So be cautious who you're starting and sitting. And we'll talk about that a little bit more tomorrow, okay? Subscribe, thumbs up, drop a question below. How you doing? Who screwed you this week? I love to make this interactive, and I appreciate I'll keep the content coming to you every single day. Have a great day. We'll talk soon.